Right now, there is a good chance a woman has already decided she wants you, and you have no idea the moment it happened. It did not arrive with a confession or a dramatic gesture. It happened quietly, somewhere in an ordinary conversation, and you walked right past it without realizing what you were standing inside of. That is not because you are careless. It is because of how women are taught, almost from childhood, to protect a decision like this instead of announcing it. She will not say it out loud. Saying it costs her something you have probably never had to think about. So instead, she shows you, through four specific behaviors that most men misread as distance, confusion, or her simply losing interest. One of those four is happening to you right now, with someone, and you are almost certainly reading it backwards. By the end of this video, you will be able to recognize each of these signals the moment they appear. You will know which one applies to your situation, and you will finally understand why she chose to show you this way instead of just telling you. Before you can read any of these signs, you have to understand one thing most men get completely backwards. Her silence is not the absence of a decision, it is the result of one. When a woman decides she wants someone, she is not just risking rejection the way a man does when he makes the first move. She is risking something quieter and in many ways heavier, the exposure of wanting in a world that has taught her wanting is dangerous to show first. Psychologists who study early-stage attraction describe this as asymmetric vulnerability, meaning the emotional cost of revealing interest is not the same for both people in a situation. For her, it is almost always higher, so she does not say it. She lets her behavior say it instead, in ways that can be quietly walked back if she needs to. Of course, this does not mean every woman is calculating or guarded on purpose. Most of this happens below conscious thought, the same way your own face changes around someone you like without you deciding it should. But the effect is the same. The proof is never going to come from her mouth, so if she will never say it, the only place left to look is what she does without thinking. And the first one is so small, you have probably already walked past it. It starts with something you said once and forgot the same day. A small detail thrown out in passing. Then weeks later it comes back to you from her mouth, and you barely notice what it means. Maybe you mentioned, almost as an aside, that you were dreading a dentist appointment, or that your sister was visiting that weekend. You did not flag it as important. You barely remembered saying it yourself, but she did. And the moment it resurfaces, how did the dentist go? Or, did your sister end up coming? Most men register it as politeness and move on. Researchers who study attention and memory call this incidental recall, the brain's tendency to retain detail tied to something it is marked as emotionally significant, even when the detail itself is mundane. In plain terms, she is not trying to remember. Her mind is doing it automatically because some part of her has already filed you under important. Of course, context still matters here. A close friend might remember small things too, simply because friendship also creates that kind of attention. But there is a difference between memory used to be kind and memory used almost without permission, surfacing at moments that have nothing to do with the conversation itself. One instance proves very little. A pattern, where she keeps circling back to things you said weeks ago without being prompted, is a different matter entirely. The common mistake here is assuming this is just how she treats everyone, without ever testing that assumption against how she treats people she is not interested in. Memory is the easy one to spot, because it points back at you. The next sign is harder, because it shows up in where she puts her body, not what she keeps in her mind. A woman who has chosen you will rarely chase you in the open. Instead, she does something quieter and far more revealing. She arranges her world so that you keep ending up in the same room. This is what behavioral researchers call engineered proximity, the unconscious habit of adjusting routine, timing, or location to increase the odds of crossing paths with someone significant, while keeping each individual instance deniable. She is not following you. She is making sure that if a path happens to cross, it looks like coincidence rather than pursuit. Think back to a stretch of time when one person kept appearing at the edges of your week, the same coffee run, the same group plans, the same online presence right when you happened to be online too. At the time, it probably felt random. It rarely is. She might shift which entrance she uses, which event she agrees to attend, which day she chooses to run an errand she could have run any day that week. Each one individually means almost nothing. That is exactly the point. She needs deniability, because if you noticed the pattern and called it out directly, she could simply say it was nothing. The need for that escape route is itself the signal. Now, you might be thinking, couldn't this just be a busy schedule overlapping with yours by chance? Sometimes, yes, but chance does not usually repeat itself 5 or 6 times across a few weeks while consistently favoring proximity to one specific person. The common mistake men make here is treating each appearance as isolated instead of stepping back and counting how often it happens. But proximity can still be explained away as coincidence, and she knows it. The third sign cannot, because it is the moment she stops protecting herself around you. There is a specific moment that changes everything, and most men miss it because it does not look like attraction at all. It looks like her dropping her guard for the first time. Up until this point, almost everyone she meets gets a version of her that has been quietly edited, composed, agreeable, a little performed, the way most of us are with people we have not fully let in. Then, with you, something shifts. She admits she is exhausted without apologizing for it. She lets you see her annoyed, unsure of herself, or honestly uncertain about something she would normally smooth over. Psychologists studying intimacy formation call this selective self-disclosure, the deliberate choice to reveal an unflattering or unguarded version of yourself to someone specific, because the relationship has crossed into a category where performing no longer feels necessary. In plain language, she has decided you are someone she does not need to impress anymore, and that decision means far more than constant flattery ever could. Remember what I told you at the start? That there was one behavior most men not only miss, but actively misread? We are getting close to it now, and this one sits right at the edge of it. Of course, not every unguarded moment is significant. People get tired around everyone eventually. But there is a clear difference between general tiredness and a specific, repeated willingness to be unpolished only in front of you, while still managing the curated version everywhere else. The common mistake men make here is mistaking this honesty for her losing interest, simply because it feels less exciting than the early, polished version of her. It is the opposite. And that misreading is exactly the trap, because the fourth sign does not feel like being chosen at all. It feels like losing her. This is the one almost every man gets wrong, and getting it wrong has cost more good relationships than any argument ever has. When she goes quiet, you assume she is leaving. Sometimes she has just stopped auditioning. Early on, when a woman is still uncertain about where she stands with you, she tends to perform. Quick replies, eager questions, visible effort to keep the connection alive. That energy feels good, so men learn to associate it with interest. Then one day it fades, the texts slow down, the eagerness softens into something calmer, and panic sets in. But here is what most explanations skip over entirely. Researchers studying long-term attachment describe a shift called settled security, the point where a person stops performing interest because some part of her has stopped doubting that the connection is already there. She is not pulling away. She has simply stopped working to prove something she no longer feels uncertain about. Think about it like this. You do not send a follow-up text confirming someone already knows you arrived safely, once they know you well enough to assume it. The effort drops because the need for it has quietly disappeared. Of course, this is the part that requires real honesty from you, because withdrawal caused by losing interest and stillness caused by security can look almost identical on the surface. The difference shows up over time, not in a single quiet week. Does the warmth return when you do connect, or has something gone cold underneath it? One feels like rest, the other feels like absence. The common mistake is reacting to the silence itself instead of reading what sits underneath it. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it, but it raises a harder question, because the same quiet can mean two opposite things. What you have just walked through is not really 4 separate signs. It is one underlying truth wearing 4 different disguises, A woman who has chosen someone almost always shows it through small, deniable, easily overlooked behavior, because saying it directly has never felt safe to her the way it might feel safe to you. Memory, proximity, exposure, and stillness are not random behaviors. They are the same decision, surfacing in different parts of her life depending on how secure she has come to feel. You do not need to overanalyze every glance or every quiet evening from here forward, turning each one into a forensic investigation. That is not what this knowledge is for. It is for recognizing the pattern when it is genuinely there, instead of waiting for a version of clarity that, for many women, will simply never come in words. I want to know which of these 4 signs hit closest to home for you. So tell me, which of these signs is the one you almost missed? And who is the person it made you think of the moment you saw it? If this kind of insight into how women actually think and act has been useful to you, this channel exists for exactly that, translating behavior most men never get explained to them in plain, honest language. Because here is the part nobody warns you about. The same quiet that means she has chosen you can also mean she is quietly letting go. And in the next video, I will show you the exact difference, so you never confuse the two again.